Hello, everyone, and welcome back. Here we are today with episode 13 of the Fair Housing Insiders, and today's topic is extremely important from the standpoint of how do we prepare ourselves for when fair housing testers may come to our property. We know this is a common practice, and so we're going to go through some scenarios that will be intriguing and also beneficial to all of us to make sure that we're prepared for when those situations arise. So we want to welcome you to the show. We thank you for being here. Make sure you give us that thumbs up, and we look forward to getting into this discussion. Before we get into our scenarios, though, we'd like to welcome Kathy Williams, who has been a regular on our show, and also Leslie Tucker from Williams, Edelstein, and Tucker, a law firm here in the Atlanta area. So welcome both of you to our show. It's nice to have you here today.
Thanks, Jonathan. Looking forward to it. This is a really important topic for our audience.
And I'm so glad to be here for the first time.
Yeah. Welcome. So we're going to have a great show. Looking forward to both of your insights on some of the scenarios that we're going to discuss today. And they're all important ones. So we got to think to ourselves, how would I react in this situation as you see each of these scenes? And then take notes on both Kathy and Leslie's comments on how we can approach them. So let's get into our first scene. And so often what happens with fair housing testers is they will call the same property, but it will be two different testers that make that phone call. So let's take a look at this scene, and then we'll get some feedback from Kathy and Leslie and see what they think about it.
Hi, I'm calling about the 2-bedroom apartment you have available.
For sure. Thank you for calling. We actually have 2 available. We have an amazing community area with a gym and a pool, and we are so close to some fantastic shopping areas.
Hi, I'm calling about the 2-bedroom apartment you have available.
I'm sorry. We no longer have those available.
So this scenario is a great one because it covers a method of testing that is extremely common, which is telephone testing. Mm-hmm. Testing definitely occurs in person a lot, and I'm sure we'll kind of get into that maybe later, but telephone testing is the most common method of testing, and that's why it's so important that people who answer your phones kind of know what to do and, what your policies are and how to respond to certain questions. In this scenario, it's highly unlikely that the person answering the phone treated those 2 callers differently because of anyone's accent. Highly unlikely. The most likely scenario is that, in one call, he or she was, had lots of time, wasn't distracted, could, give all the information. In the other call, with the Asian caller, it's very possible that they were distracted. They had people in their office, they were busy, and they just didn't either, have time or want to give all the information. However, this is exactly what testers are looking for. They are looking for, did one caller receive different information, more information, and information about amenities or surrounding areas is not insignificant. That's important information, just like, the price of rent. Right. So this type of information needs to be consistently given every single call. So there's no, even misunderstanding about maybe why the information was different.
Excellent. Yeah. Good points. Thank you. Kathy, you have anything to add to that?
I would just also add that this particular test that we're talking about is about availability. Mm-hmm. And boy, that is something you do not want to get wrong. Either you have a 2-bedroom available or you don't. And if you had it for one caller and maybe it did get booked in between those calls, just make sure you have a record of the time when that unit came off the market, so that if you do get accused of offering it to one tester, not to another, you can show why that happened.
Excellent. Yeah. Beautiful feedback. So, and I like, Leslie, how you kind of put that into the picture of, this was not intentional, coincidentally. The tester called it this time, then another one called it this time, and circumstances change. So just a lot of items to consider. And Kathy, I love that point. Document when things took place so that you can respond. So excellent. So that was our first scene, 1 of 5. So let's go into our second scenario, and that's dealing with pet restrictions. Let's take a look at our scene, and we'll get everyone's feedback on this one.
This is a beautiful apartment. Do you accept animals? I have an emotional support pit bull. He goes everywhere with me.
I am sorry, but pit bulls are on our list of restricted breeds.
Oh, wow. So this is a major, not only foot and mouth scenario, but a major legal problem for this company now, because of what this leasing agent just said. And I do believe that she probably missed the fair housing section of their training day when she was hired. The main thing that she did wrong was not recognize the fact that assistance animals, service and emotional support animals, can be any type of dog, and they can't be limited to just the breeds that you allow at your complex. They can be any type of dog, and really they can be any type of animal, period. You can't have restrictions on breeds or really species of animals when it comes to assistance animals. Restricting, right off the bat, restricting types of breeds or types of species is just a violation of the Fair Housing Act on paper. There's really no getting around it. And if this happens with one of your employees, you really won't have any other option besides to settle this case if someone does challenge it with HUD or in court. And that's going to cost a lot of money. So this is just kind of basic, assistance animals 101. When you get a request from an applicant or a prospect or a resident to bring their animal as, an assistance animal, you need to look at it on a case-by-case basis, and not some big blanket restriction. Look at each case and each request, and then evaluate it according to your company's policies, which need to obviously be compliant with the Fair Housing Act.
Very nice. Awesome. Thank you so much, Leslie. Kathy, any further comments? Anything else to add?
I would just throw in here that this is probably the most common testing question there is.
Wow.
So everyone absolutely needs to be ready for this, rehearse how you answer this, do in-house training over this particular scenario, and don't get caught making a mistake.
Very good. Yeah, very good. Thank you both. So that brings us to our third scenario where fair housing testers could be testing us out, making sure we're in compliance with fair housing law. And that's with a criminal background and seeing how you would respond if someone says, I have a criminal history. So let's take a look at our scene and we'll get some feedback from Kathy and Leslie.
Thank you for the information about the apartment. I do have a felony conviction. Will that be a problem during the application process?
It probably will. I hear there are some somewhat decent apartments on the south side of town. Have you checked there?
So this is a fair housing issue that has kind of gained attention a lot more in the last several years. Agencies are catching on to it, And a lot more testing is being done in this area. I know that in Florida, there are several complainants and law firms that have made a fortune off of this type of testing. And it's because people aren't really aware that it's such a big issue. Maybe they haven't been trained on it, and they don't really know the correct way to answer these types of questions when they get them on the phone or in person. The reason this is a big issue is that HUD has determined and has made it very clear to housing providers that if they have strict criminal history policies, those can be discriminatory against certain groups of people, mainly Hispanic and African American applicants. So that's why this is kind of a big deal now. And you should be aware that if you do receive questions about it, it might be a test, it might not. But regardless of if you suspect it's a test or not, you should answer it correctly. And that is, come apply. Just come on and apply.
Right.
And, we'll check everything out. We'll do our screening the way we do for everyone. And then we'll give you a decision based on our policies. It's never a good idea to make a determination about someone's eligibility before even seeing their application or screening them. It's never a good idea, especially give that information out over the phone to an applicant that, may or may not even be a real applicant. It's not smart, and it can definitely be viewed as a violation of the Fair Housing Act.
Very good. Thank you. Excellent insight. Kathy, any thoughts?
I think Leslie covered it.
Okay. Beautiful. Excellent. Yeah. So it's interesting to note that this is, as you pointed out, Leslie, like a very, very common one, and yet somewhat overlooked from a training perspective. Powerful reminder for all those who are listening to our show today, who are in the training department, to make sure that they include that as part of their role-based training, or review it with their employees if it's a part of their online training or any type of fair housing training. So thank you for that. So that takes us to our fourth scenario, and that's a prospect who is a tester and says that they have children, and they have X amount of children, and there's this many bedrooms available in a particular unit. So let's take a look at our scene, and we'll get your feedback.
I am so glad you have a 2-bedroom apartment available. Me and my 3 children will love it.
Wait, did you say you had 3 children? I think you would probably be better suited for at least a 3-bedroom apartment. Let me see what we have.
In this scenario, this leasing agent treated this family with children differently by steering them towards what she deemed as a more appropriate sized apartment for them, and where she necessarily wouldn't have done for a family without children. This goes directly to familial status discrimination. That is discrimination on the basis of someone having 1 or more children under the age of 18. Occupancy issues go directly towards familial status issues and whether it's discriminatory or not. A company's occupancy policy is important. And while historically, a lot of companies have had 2-person per bedroom policies. I've heard 2 heartbeats per bedroom, which is very strict.
Yep.
These have historically been acceptable. It's been the most common occupancy standard amongst private market properties. However, in the last several years, probably maybe the last 5 years, HUD has determined that these types of occupancy policies, these 2-person per bedroom policies, can be discriminatory against families with children. And they have started encouraging housing providers of private market properties to extend or increase those types of policies. So it does not affect families like this scenario that have 3 children. We don't know from the scenario whether the family has 2 parents or 1 parent. So there could be 4 family members involved. There could be 5. But regardless, this agent should not have made the determination that, maybe they weren't eligible for a 2-bedroom. Maybe they, would be more comfortable in a 3-bedroom. Whatever her motivation was, she was treating them differently because they had kids. Right. And that is where an employee and therefore a company can get into trouble.
Excellent. Excellent feedback. Kathy, you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I would just remind housing providers that if they have not looked at their occupancy policy in the last several years for these issues of familial status and whether they can support the policy they have if it got challenged under disparate impact issues, they need to do that, because there are other things involved nowadays when we talk about developing an occupancy policy, more than just 1 or 2 people per bedroom. We need to look beyond that now. So I would encourage everybody to, if they haven't, to look again at their occupancy policy.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you both. And just as a reminder, if you're appreciating this educational session that's complimentary from the Fair Housing Institute, please give us a thumbs up. We really appreciate your support of this channel. So far, we've covered 4 potential scenarios where fair housing testers could be approaching your property and testing you out to see if you are compliant with the fair housing law. So let's look at our 5th and final scenario, and that has to deal with accessibility. Let's take a look at our scene, and we'll get some feedback from Kathy and Leslie.
First, I'm going to take you to our model, and then I'll show you our community area.
Thank you. Well, that was interesting. So the community pool had no way for someone with a wheelchair to have access. And when I asked if they had certain unit accessibility options, the leasing person had no clue.
So accessibility testing is also very common, and it's also very it's also very easy. Accessibility testers don't necessarily need to take a tour of your property to determine whether your property, or at least the outside of your property, is in compliance with fair housing accessibility laws. Sometimes they can just drive around your parking lot and look at, your parking spaces and your entryway. And sometimes they can go in and take a tour so they can see kind of your amenities and your common areas, and they can tell whether you are in compliance or not. Unfortunately, if a tester does this, it's almost too late to fix it before they can notice it. So it's important for properties, if you think that you may have some compliance issues, to go ahead and get it checked out. Bring someone in to look around, to do an inspection, and to let you know what issues exist and what issues you can feasibly correct. That wouldn't, break your bank. It's important to do that because once an accessibility issue is identified, you're going to have to settle that case. If it's a legitimate non-compliance issue, you're not only going to have to pay the complainant who files the case, but then you're going to have to pay to have the issue corrected anyways.
Right.
So it's really in your best interest to go ahead and identify what those issues are. And sometimes it's just a parking space issue that you need to restripe part of your parking lot, or sometimes they're not hard fixes, and they're doable. You just need to know what they are. Accessibility laws can be confusing because they differ from property to property depending on what your funding is, what type of property you are, how old your property is. So it's important to get someone who knows what those laws are and which ones apply to your property to figure out what you may need to do to bring your property into compliance so you don't get into a mess like this.
Very nice. Thank you for that. And Kathy, any further comments or thoughts?
I think Leslie and I would both encourage properties to have that kind of inspection up front. Make sure you know if there are some non-compliant issues in this area before you get visited by a tester. And especially the areas around the outside of your property, which is usually what these testers are looking for. Mm-hmm. Thresholds, stairways, slopes on parking lots and sidewalks. Take care of that now and don't wait till later. It's worth the money to do it now. These cases are so expensive and so painful, and we would hope that you, your company, your property would avoid having one of these.
Excellent. Thank you so much. So there's 5 scenes, and there's others to think about, but these ones we know happen very often. And so we're so grateful to have not 1, but 2 attorneys on our show today. So big, huge thank you to both of you, Kathy and Leslie. We're grateful to have you on our show today.
Thanks, Jonathan. Good to talk to you again, and we will see you back here for the next time.
And thank you, Jonathan. It was great to be here, and I hope to come back.
You will be. There's no doubt about that. We will be having you back. So just keep in mind, everyone, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Give us that thumbs up. We appreciate your support of this complimentary fair housing education channel. And if you'd like to learn more about Leslie and her law firm, you can go to fairhousingfirm.com. That's fairhousingfirm.com. That will be in the show notes if you'd like to click on that. And as well, please check out the fairhousinginstitute.com. That's fairhousinginstitute.com. That's where you can find more information about all of our online courses and what's available to you there. So thank you again for being here. Appreciate your support. We'll see you on our next show.